What's up, YouTube? I'm Mike. I'm back. You guys don't seem to be enjoying my last video for some reason. I can't figure it out. But since I've started going down this rabbit hole, as I mentioned in the last video, in my brain, like all of these thoughts are starting to arise in consciousness. You know, now I'm starting to play the devil's advocate in my head with all of these different issues. So I'm gonna in this video, I'm just gonna basically kind of think out loud. I'm just gonna tell you some of the thoughts that are occurring in my head. So please understand, I'm not making a definitive statement yet, one way or the other, how I feel about this topic. It's just that I have been feeling one way for so long, and now there's this voice in my head that's going, maybe you should take a look at this again. So as you can see from the title, what I've been thinking about today is women's sports. One of the things that's funny about women's sports is that I didn't know anything about women's sports. I think the vast majority of people in America, no one's spending a lot of time thinking about women's sports. You know, we all know it exists, but fucking nobody watches it. I mean, the WNBA is a total fucking joke. I guess that's the only professional, I don't even know. Are there other professional women's sports? There's no, basically the collegiate level is the end all be all of women's sports. And then you've got all of these various sports that girls apparently compete in for whatever reason. I've never really understood why we have all this to begin with, but whatever. And so the thing that occurred to me tonight is that it really wasn't until a man or a trans woman got involved that anybody even was thinking about women's sports. When you think about it, nobody in America was talking about women's collegiate swimming until Lia Thomas got in the pool. And then all of a sudden there's this big uproar and we're all getting worked up oh my God, what's going on? The men are taking over the women's sports. And it's first of all, who gives a shit? I don't even know why these sports exist to begin with. It makes no sense. I mean, it's just for the fun of it, right? It's not. They started getting all upset because records are being broken, and it's is this Major League Baseball, or is there a home run title? Is there historical records that we care about? Suddenly how fast some college age kid can swim in a pool fucking matters on some level. And then I started realizing that there's an inherent hypocrisy going on here that nobody seems to be talking about. And that is that women seem to want equality on their terms. It's not really free for all equality. So Lia Thomas, basically nobody, the only reason anyone in America knows who Riley Gaines is because of Lia Thomas. Lia Thomas made Riley Gaines famous. Riley Gaines, nobody would have ever heard this girl's name in life if not for Lia Thomas. All of these trans women, I think I have that right, trans women, are basically making these otherwise no-name girls famous by invading their spaces. And that's what this conversation is about, is that now you have these men who don't feel like men, they feel like they're women, but are maybe physically male, and they're invading women's spaces, and that's a problem. So in the beginning, I got all emotionally caught up in this because I have a daughter. And it's oh my God, this is insane. How could this be happening in our country? I don't want men in the locker room with my daughter. First of all, I don't know why none of the dads have done anything to stop this. Everybody's all supposedly up in arms, but nobody's actually really doing anything about it. The other question I never could understand is, why is it that the second that Lia Thomas stepped foot into that pool, why didn't 100% of the girls boycott the sport? They could have brought the sport to its knees in 2 competitions if they had just boycotted the sport. They're not going to be able to keep the thing running if Lia Thomas is the only person in the pool. But they didn't do that. They just kept on competing and losing races and complaining about it. The reality is they probably like Lia Thomas. Lia Thomas made them famous. if Lia Thomas is not in that pool, no one in America is talking about women's collegiate swimming. No one. They actually need him or her to even exist in the public eye. So the hypocrisy of it is that they made this huge deal about a man, you know, an intact man being in the women's locker room. Meanwhile, for like decades, firefighting was predominantly a male job. And so you have these men, most of which who are married, or some of which who are married, living in a fire station for some number of days on end away from their families, and it was like a big boys club. Then all of a sudden girls decided that they wanted equality and they wanted to be firefighters too, and now there's women living in the male fucking firehouse. Imagine how the wives must have felt about that when the first women started moving into the firehouses and sleeping in the same room with their married husbands, or in the same building with their married husbands. Where's the equality there? So you don't want men in the girls' locker room, but you can have women in the men's firehouse? And this is what's constantly being overlooked, because both sides of the fence is trying to politicize this situation. They're trying to use these people suffering on both sides as political cannon fodder. And nobody's really talking about what matters, which is that there's a tremendous amount of hypocrisy going on here. So it seems to me, when you really get down to it, if you were to play the devil's advocate with this, and like I said, I'm not making any statements of what's right and wrong. I certainly would not want to do anything to endanger my daughter. I wouldn't allow it. This has come up now with Planet Fitness. Like, people are asking me, what are you going to do? You know, are you worried about your wife go in the locker room? And I'm like, no, because now I can go in the locker room with her. So it's like, perfect, great. You just open the locker room to me and my wife to use the same bathroom. What am I worried about? I'm never going to allow my wife or my daughter to be in any kind of danger. But what we have here is a situation where, what we have here is a situation of hypocrisy. We have a situation where somebody wants to say, it seems to me that what we have is that it's okay for the women to be in the men's spaces, the spaces that have been predominantly men's spaces. That's okay. But they don't want men in what has been predominantly women's spaces. And so this is the nature of hypocrisy, and it's what no one seems to be really looking at. And these are the questions that this situation has caused me to start thinking about. You know, it's caused me to start questioning all of the things that I believe about life in general. Like, you know, I have been so fucking staunchly right-wing to the point that I have just been blindly following the party line, and I made myself basically aligned against anything that the leftists wanted. So, like, when they overturned Roe v. Wade, I actually celebrated that as a victory, which is insane because I'm pro-choice. It wasn't really a victory, but I counted it as a victory because it hurt people on the left. I didn't even really care about the agenda. It's just that I wanted to see what I considered to be my political enemy suffer. And so when Roe v. Wade got overturned, I didn't celebrate that from an ideological perspective. I just celebrated it because I didn't like all of the other things that the left was doing. And so when you really start to separate yourself from the gang mentality, I'm a Republican, I'm a liberal, I'm this, I'm that, and you start to step back from the entire thing and look at it from the outside objectively, or attempt to look at it as objectively as possible, you start to see that things are not quite as clear as they seem. Obviously, I don't think that it's a good idea. Like, I think girls should be able to have their sports and compete and do all of this. But at the end of the day, you could just as easily make the argument that it doesn't really make any sense to begin with. Like, what is this time being invested in? And, you know, in all honesty, basically anything else that like Riley Gaines could have invested her time in would be more advantageous for her future than any of the time she spent in that pool. Like, there's no future for a collegiate swimmer. So you go to college to get a degree to like swim, or to go on to be like a stay-at-home mom. I'm not really sure. I don't know enough about her to know her angle. And that's the point. I never even really tried to get to know her. I just championed her because she was a voice that was lined up with my cause. And now all of my causes are coming into question. And so that's what I just decided I would come on here and make this quick rant. Again, not trying to make any definitive statements. I just think that it's interesting to think about when you really separate yourself from the gang mentality and go, what's really going on here at face value? What's really going on here underneath? Is this a fair thing to pick apart? So I would love for someone in the comments to explain to me why you think it's okay for there to be women in the firehouse, but not men in the locker room. As always, we'll see you on the next one.